the way that Macron is messaging is actually the answer to a question a lot of us have had for a long time. Like, how do you do this? We've seen far right people go after Muslims and go after Islam all the time. We agree that that's not the right way to go. We've seen the leftists sort of bend over backwards to try and accommodate it. We know that's not the right way to go either. So how would a liberal, right, take this on in a way that is beneficial? And I think that the messaging for this has been amazing. So one of the things that he is saying, right, is, for example, here's a quote. He said, quote, "Secularism is the glue of a united France. Our challenge is to fight against those who derail in the name of religion while protecting those who believe in Islam and are full citizens of the Republic." Like, he is doing this as a way to protect them. Another thing that he said was that he accepted responsibility. He's like, France, the French state itself, is partly responsible for the ghettoization of communities where radical Islamists have established themselves because it has not paid them enough attention. Where we have moved away, they have stepped in. So he's saying that we need to reach out to our Muslim communities.
And he's accepting blame.
He's accepting blame. We need to reach out to them. We need to incorporate them and bring them in. And we have to recognize this problem because they are the ones who are the victims of it. Their children are the ones who are becoming victims of it. And now, let me tell you, a lot of, like, when they banned the burqa, like, about 50% of the Muslims in France agreed with it, even though I don't agree with it, but 50% of the Muslims agree with it too. Yeah, so there's a lot of, when they, the way that he has been messaging this, saying that Islam is in crisis, he has been making that distinction that we have talked about for ages and ages and ages between Islam and Muslims. Now, it's not perfect. He says, Islam, they're doing it in the name of Islam. They're derailing the name of Islam. All of that.
It's not perfect. Yes.
It's not perfect, but he's making that distinction. He's like, we don't want this indoctrination of the ideology, but we want to respect the Muslims that are here and their children. We need to reach out and bring them into French society because that is who they are. They should not be separate from them.
Yeah, so he's doing two things. He's taking an aggressive stance against Islam. Unfortunately, he calls it political Islam. We think that's just Islam, but again, it's not. We can't ask for too much. It's already better than most politicians, so whatever. He's taking an aggressive stance against that, and he's being very inclusive and to Muslims and treating them like not otherizing them, wanting to make them feel welcome, wanting them to make them feel like France is their country, that the government represents them. So he's doing a very, like, relative to other politicians, he's doing it so far. Again, there are some things I've seen that has been concerning me, but so far he's the best I've ever seen. And one thing that a lot of Muslims don't realize, first, I follow a lot of Muslims to see how they cover this. They do not, when they are like highlighting Macron, all of this language that is being nice to Muslims and he's saying like he wants to make them feel welcome, that we shouldn't like demonize them, we shouldn't otherize them. And they don't highlight any of that because they want to demonize Macron and everything France does. But one thing that they just focus on the fact that he's protecting the cartoons and how oppressive that is to Muslims, that he's protecting the cartoons. And they compare this to acts of genocide against Muslims and other discrimination, which is very bigoted against Muslims themselves to compare. First of all, they act like the cartoons are coming from the government itself, which is moronic. The government is basically not banning them, and they think like the government is endorsing the cartoons just because they're not banning them. But the lack of banning of the cartoons is being compared by all these Muslim content creators to acts of genocide on Muslims by other oppressors, which is very unfair towards Muslims who have been victims of violence, oppressions, and genocide. For their suffering to be compared to people being exposed to cartoons. And another thing that a lot of Muslims in France may not understand or being lied to about is how much an aggressive stance against Islam, radical Islam in France, how much that coming from Macron, how much this will help them. Because I don't know if they understand that how frustrated and tired a lot of non-Muslim French are of a lack of backbone by the politicians, and how much of an easy push this is towards more far-right governments if this more mainstream liberal governments don't take a stand. And basically what Macron is doing is a major favor to Muslims in France by taking a strong stance. He's avoiding these far-right groups becoming more and more popular. Like if you're a Muslim in France, you would want Macron to go even more aggressive than what he's doing, so to steal this platform away, because if he doesn't, all he's going to be doing is going to be giving an excuse for the far-right people to come in and appeal to the people that do want a stronger pushback. And again, if these far-right groups become more popular in France, that's not going to be a France that these Muslims would like to be living under. So for the sake of Muslims themselves, they should be wanting Macron to take a strong stance so that the far-right groups don't become more influential. But go on.
Yeah, so here's a quote that actually applies a lot to us. So he talked about when people asked him, he was trying to target Muslims. He said specifically, "I don't feel my speech was against Muslims. It's like on the contrary." Right? He said, "We must help this religion to organize itself so that it is a partner of the Republic. We must build an Enlightenment Islam," he said, referring to the philosophical movement that promoted the separation of church and state. So maybe we should have him on this podcast.
Yeah, and that's getting so close to the name. Yeah. We have a show.
I don't think he'd know what to do. He's like, okay, I love the secular parts, and I love the Enlightenment parts, but
okay, yeah, you're getting a little bit choppy. But I just want to clarify that. The things that we don't like about the way it's being used, the whole mention of political Islam is ridiculous. There is no such thing as political Islam. Islam as a whole is political. So this whole Islam is separating Islam from Islamism, separating Islam from political Islam doesn't make any sense. But again, Macron is a politician. I don't think it would be fair for us to expect him to come out and say, Islam is a violent religion and it's all political. We can't expect him to say anything like that. This is already pretty much further than most of us expect. I mean, he did come out and say that people are misusing Islam for their own radical agenda, and I'm like, they're not. I mean, they're just using Islam to do exactly what it's supposed to do. So again, these are like stuff that we don't get to be that picky about. It's already much better than most people. I do also want to mention that this whole accusation of Macron otherizing Muslims, even though he's doing the exact opposite of trying to...
He's doing the exact opposite. Yeah.
He's doing the exact opposite of otherizing Muslims. He's trying to push forward to make them feel more included and more feel like... Again, so here's the thing. The Muslims in France feel less, they grow up feeling less like France is their home and that they are French than Muslims in Canada or Muslims in the United States. More Muslims in Canada feel like Canada is their country on a per capita basis than Muslims in France. Okay, and that's something that needs to change, and Macron is doing that. But the people who are otherizing Muslims are Muslim leaders from other countries who keep referring to Muslims in France as if they are their people against French people, right? So the way that leaders from Iran, Turkey, Malaysia, and Pakistan come and talk about Muslims in France, they don't even refer to them as French. They refer to them as if they're part of their ummah, as part of their community, as if Erdogan or Rouhani or Imran Khan, as if they represent as if they are representative or leaders of this group of people in France that have nothing to do with you. They never elected you. They didn't choose you as their leaders, and you're coming and speaking on their behalf and acting like they are your people just because they're Muslim and you're Muslim, and you don't even refer to them. If you listen to the language, they speak to them as like French people against Muslims, as if the Muslims in France are not French. So they use this otherizing language, and they act like they're the guardians of Muslims in France, and they want the Muslims in France to feel like they they are not French, and that Macron does not have their best interest in mind, and that they do. So they are promoting the segregation. They are trying to claim these people, and this is the real act of otherizing Muslim and making them like as if they're separate from the rest of France, right? And to encourage that separatism. So again, this otherization is coming from Muslim leaders that are not French, that have no business in getting involved in these are not your people. And again, these, by the way, these are the same people, at least when it comes to Iran and Pakistan and Malaysia. Turkey is an exception, that do not feel the same level of entitlement when it comes to Muslims in China. So that's another whole level of hypocrisy that I don't even know if we want to touch here. But